Chapter 741. 3 Seals. When the three people tossed Su Ming and Yu Xian to the 9th summit, they rushed back straight towards the incoming Dao Slave 21. In the midst of the booming sounds that signaled death, Su Ming let out the shrillest roar in his life. As he roared, Dao Slave 21 walked out of the blood mist caused by the trio's self-destruction with an aloof face. Dao Yuan had an excited expression on his face as he followed right after. At that moment, Su Ming and Yu Xian were still 5,000 feet away from the 9th summit, but it was useless. Even if they managed to reach the 9th summit, it was useless. In Yu Xian's ears echoed her mother's voice. As that voice rang, her mind gradually came out of its muddled state, and she looked at Su Ming. "Do you know why I'm called Yu Xian?" The meaning for Xian is daylily, and it is a type of flower that forgets sadness. I'm a daylily in the rain. This is the name my mother gave me. She wanted me to forget sadness in my life and be happy forever. My mother is calling me now. I'll be leaving to reunite with my mother. Before I leave, I'll give you a gift. A smile appeared on her face. That smile was incredibly sincere and beautiful. She looked at Su Ming and held him gently as she kissed his blood-stained lips. At the instant her lips touched Su Ming's, a wave of abyss death aura moved from her mouth into Su Ming's body and fused with his soul. The aura turned into a roar inside Su Ming, and he felt as if his soul began to boil. Yet as it happened, Yu Xian's lips became colder. Gradually, the sparkle in her eyes disappeared completely, leaving behind only dullness. This time, I really suffered a huge loss, but I'm really happy to have gotten to know you. Yu Xian released her grip, and her body plunged to the ground. Su Ming felt as if his soul was burning. Waves of pain washed over him, but he could sense that his soul was madly swelling up. This feeling was enough to drive him mad. It was as if his blood had been awakened and as if his soul was going through a metamorphosis. During that moment, a feeling of strength came along with the pain, and it was increasing at a frenzied pace. Su Ming did not know what Yu Xian had given to him, but he did know that it was what his soul had been lacking. The breath she gave him was familiar somehow, and it was something seemed to have completed his soul. The instant abyss awakening erupted in Su Ming's soul. Intense pain submerged him. He roared shrilly from it. He extended his arm without any hesitation, grabbed the hand of Yu Xian, who had now lost her consciousness and who was uncertain to survive this. It was as if Su Ming wanted to take hold of Yu Xian's body and save it from plunging to the ground. Yet Dao Slave 21 had already moved towards him. His lifted right hand was shining with starlight. Right at the instant it was about to land on Su Ming, a person walked out from the distortions within the 5,000 feet behind Su Ming. It was Bai Su. She was dressed in white and was incredibly beautiful. There was a smile on her face, and within her smile as well as her gaze was a wild beauty. She moved past Su Ming and rushed towards Dao Slave 21 like a moth having seen a flame. At that instant, the presence of self-destruction surrounded her body. That presence was like the water from the river in the sky spilling onto the ground, just like her life. I can, too. These were the final words Bai Su said before she self-destructed. As she spoke, a loud boom that surged into the sky reverberated in the air before Su Ming. As those booms roared, Su Ming watched Bai Su disappear, and he went mad. A white piece of fabric fell back and moved past his side as the shockwaves from the explosion spread out. He wanted to grab it, but he did not manage to. The white piece of fabric flew farther and farther away. He wanted to grab it, but he would have to let go of Yu Xian's hand to do so. He wanted to grab it, but that white piece of fabric flew farther and farther. His grip on Yu Xian's hand gradually lost strength, because the intense pain spreading through his soul was unbearable. It was a feeling as if his soul was about to erupt, a crazed feeling as if he was about to awaken. When Yu Xian's hand slipped out of Su Ming's grip because he had lost his strength, her body plunged to the ground. Her eyes remained closed through it all, and Su Ming descended into madness, his eyes weeping tears of blood. He pressed his palms against his head, not hiding his red eyes, and roared like a wild beast howling in despair. It was also at that instant that the yellow dragon in the sky let out a shrill roar. It charged towards the ground. At that moment, it could no longer bother about the 3 Dao slaves. There was only one thought remaining in its head: to catch Xian. Its body swept through the air and charged to the ground. At the instant Xian was to hit the ground, the dragon caught her on its back. A shrill roar came from its mouth. A large amount of abyss death aura erupted from its body and surged into that of Xian. At the same time, a layer of distortions appeared in the space before the yellow dragon, as if the entrance to another world had been forcefully opened due to the world-traversing abyss dragon's inborn divine ability. It wanted to take its young master and leave the place. Its face was filled with grief, because it could sense that no matter how much abyss aura it sent into its young master's body, she was still moving slowly towards death. The 3 Dao slaves in the sky charged towards the dragon, causing Dao Yuan to become even more arrogant and unbridled. Dao Slave 21 let out a cold harumph and moved past the region where Bai Su had exploded to appear right in front of Su Ming. With an aloof look on his face, he pointed at Su Ming with his right hand through the air. Immediately, a large amount of starlight spread out from his hand. That starlight instantly enveloped Su Ming's body. With a loud bang, Su Ming was torn to pieces. Only his right hand was left. When his hand flew out, it was pushed backwards by the impact brought by his body's destruction and caught up with the white piece of fabric that was floating farther and farther into the distance. He caught it. Of his left arm, only one finger remained, and it fell on the yellow dragon's body as it traveled above the surface of the sea, carrying Xian. Su Ming thought he died, because at that moment, he could sense that his soul had scattered into the world. He could see his right hand seizing that white piece of fabric. He could see his left index finger landing beside Xian's body. He could also see his eldest senior brother's statue within his master's cave abode at the top of the 9th summit. He could see his second senior brother meditating as well as Huzi snoring. He could see all of these things. He could see the 4 Dao slaves and Dao Yuan as well. He could sense their presence. Besides seeing these things, for the first time, he sensed 3 black spots that were different from his soul within himself. 3 different waves of consciousness were spreading out of the 3 black spots. It was as if he had 3 other people's souls within his own. The 3 people's souls looked as if they had fused with his soul, turning into the final 3 seals. There were already no distinctions between these 3 seals and his soul. It would have been difficult to separate them under normal circumstances, but that breath of abyss death aura Xian had passed to Su Ming before she closed her eyes had caused his soul to boil, and it had either gained completion or changed. It allowed his soul to sense the 3 seals. At the instant Su Ming detected the 3 seals, 3 raspy and old voices appeared in his mind. I thought that you would never be able to sense us, that Hong Luo was just an accident. Scatter your mind, let us leave. We will no longer be your seal. You will also no longer be the cage that locks the 3 of us. The 3 of us will leave and help you live through this disaster. The 3 of us will leave, and we will make it be so that you will no longer be sealed. Scatter your mind. Don't you want to take revenge? Don't you want to kill these people on your own? Don't you want to protect your 9th summit? Scatter your mind. The 3 of us will help fulfill your wish. Scatter your mind. The woman called Bai Su might have died, but her body is special. She is not a berserker. Her soul is just a projection. If you scatter your mind, I can let you see where her true body lies. Scatter your mind. For you, for us. We have been sealed for far too long. You have also been sealed for far too long. Why don't we part ways now? The 3 old voices reverberated in Su Ming's consciousness and lingered for a long time. At the same time, in the midst of those roars, the 5,000 feet rune around the 9th summit crumbled completely, revealing the 9th summit before Dao Yuan and the 4 Dao slaves. At that moment, only the trembling Chen Chen and the similarly shivering bald crane remained on the mountain. And here I was wondering what sort of good stuff was hidden here. It's just a piece of trash and a bald crane. Dao Slave 31, 41, 51, go and immediately flatten this mountain. There's a cave abode at the top. Open it and check what sort of treasure is inside. Dao Slave 21, go down and bring that woman to me. Even if she's almost dead, I want to get a taste. Don't let them escape. Dao Yuan's lips curled up in a cold sneer. He pointed at the 9th summit, and when he opened his mouth, the 3 Dao slaves turned into 3 long arcs that charged towards the top of the mountain. As for Dao Slave 21, he took a step towards the Abyss Dragon that was desperately sending Abyss Death Aura into Xianxia to save her on the surface of the sea while remaining completely defenseless. The area before the Abyss Dragon distorted, slowly tearing apart to reveal a crack. However, Dao Slave 21 was traveling at a speed so quick that he could stop it before the Abyss Dragon could move into the crack. Yet right when the 4 Dao slaves split up and charged forward, a mighty pressure that had gathered from all directions in the world suddenly erupted in the air. This pressure appeared incredibly suddenly, and almost at the instant it did so, the 4 Dao slaves' expressions changed drastically. Right then, the space before Dao Slave 21 distorted, and a shadow manifested in front of him. That shadow was indistinct. He looked like an old man, but if anyone took a closer look, they would find that he might be a young man. The shadows of these two appearances overlapped and gave off an incredibly bizarre feeling. You aren't dead. Dao Slave 21 eyes went wide. The shadow of the young man was naturally Su Ming, whom he had killed just moments ago. At the instant Dao Slave 21 saw Su Ming, not only did his expression change, his heart also filled with shock. During that instant, the mighty pressure that spread out from Su Ming's body filled him with apprehension. Chapter 742, Daylily. Su Ming lifted his head, and a ghastly smile appeared on his lips, but if anyone took a closer look, they would find that the person who smiled was not actually him. Instead, it belonged to the old man whose shadow had overlapped with his. At the instant the smile appeared, Su Ming lifted his right hand and moved to seize Dao Slave 21. The man's expression changed, and with a wave of his arm, starlight instantly surrounded his body. The power that belonged to the third step erupted forth, but the endless starlight looked as if it had turned incorporeal before Su Ming, for it moved through his body. Yet Su Ming's right hand did not stop moving and grabbed Dao Slave 21. His expression changed. In shock, he quickly retreated. During that instant, Su Ming opened his mouth and spoke languidly with that bizarre smile still on his lips. Bloody son. Once he said these words, Dao Slave 21's body immediately turned red, and an illusory blood-red sun appeared around him. Dao Slave 21 coughed up blood, then noticed that it was difficult for him to retreat. As he was filled with fear, his body was swept toward Su Ming, and Su Ming grabbed his throat with his right hand. Half a step into Solar Kalpa. Dao Slave 21 let out a shrill scream, but this voice quickly fell silent. Once Su Ming seized his throat with his right hand, Dao Slave 21's body immediately became redder. Within the span of a breath, a large amount of blood erupted from his body. Moment after, Dao Slave 21 turned into a bloodless, dry corpse held by Su Ming. He had breathed his last and died. At first, he had been toying with Su Ming like a cat toying with a mouse, but on that path, he'd walked straight to his death. Su Ming relaxed his grip and flung his arm outwards. The blood that Dao Slave 21 had coughed up gathered together, turning into a blood-red mirror before Su Ming. As the surface of the mirror distorted, a galaxy and a cultivation planet appeared. There was an elegant tower in that cultivation planet, and within that tower was a woman in white. She was looking into the distance with a blank expression, and there was an absent-minded look on her face. Her face was identical to that of Bai Su. I fulfilled my promise. Once these words tumbled out of Su Ming's mouth, a ray of blood-red light flew out of his body and turned into a bloody sun in midair before charging into the distance. All of this happened too quickly, so Dao Slave 21 had turned into a dry corpse by the time Dao Yuan and his 3 Dao slaves could react. Dao Yuan's pupils shrank. He let out a piercing scream from his shock and swiftly retreated. The 3 Dao slaves could no longer bother with going to the 9th summit and charged straight at Su Ming. At that moment, the old man's shadow was no longer overlapping with Su Ming's body. Su Ming was the only one remaining in midair. He did not bother about the 3 Dao slaves rushing towards him, but turned his head around and looked at the surface of the sea. Once the crack in the air tore open, the Abyss Dragon charged into it with a roar while carrying Xianxia. Her eyes were still shut and she lay unmoving on the Abyss Dragon's back. Su Ming watched her disappear into the crack, and a mischievous young woman who would call him Little Dummy Su with a grin appeared in his eyes. Little Dummy Su. You're not answering me, so I'm reducing one medicinal core. Little dummy Sue, that big fish in the sea is really pretty, catch one for me. Little Sue, why don't you call me Big Sister? Come on, hurry up, call me Big Sister. Little Sue, that Dead Sea giant just glared at me. Go hit it. Dum Sue, that sunlight is too vicious, hold an umbrella for me. While he was dazed, overlapping shadows appeared on his body again. This time, it was no longer the same old man, but a bald one. He was incredibly big and tall. Once his shadow overlapped with Su Ming, he looked at the 3 Dao slaves with a ferocious smile. As for Su Ming, his head remained turned in the direction of the crack on the sea as he watched it gradually disappear. He also listened to the abyss dragon's sad roars as it left. Do you know why I'm known as Yu Xian? The meaning for Xian is daylily. I am a daylily in the rain. This is the name my mother gave me. She wanted me to forget the sadness in my life and be happy forever. I'll give you a gift. Su Ming's eyes became wet, but he was just a soul. He had no body. You could have left. As Su Ming mumbled, Bai Su's smile when she turned her head back rose in his eyes. That smile was incredibly beautiful, and with a reluctance to part, she gradually left into the distance. At that moment, the big man whose shadow had overlapped with Su Ming's body moved with a savage smile and appeared right before the 3 Dao slaves. When he lifted his right hand, a ray of green light erupted from his body. That light turned into a green sun, causing the world to lose all other colors. At that instant, shrill screams of pain came from the 3 Dao slaves' mouths. As 2 consecutive bangs reverberated in the air, Dao slaves 31 and 41, these 2 mighty warriors in the 3rd step dressed in constellation robes, started melting right before Su Ming and swiftly turned into ashes. Clearly, everything about their bodies had burned under the green sun. The last slave, Dao slave 51, started retreating quickly as if he had gone mad. A large amount of cracks appeared on his body, and green smoke spread out from him. There was a sense of death coming from all over his body. He withdrew back to Dao Yuan's side, grabbed the trembling young master, and fled into the distance. The shadow of the big man who had overlapped with Su Ming turned into a wisp of green smoke and flew out before fusing with the green sun in midair. He turned his head around and cast Su Ming a glance. With a loud, boisterous laugh, he charged to the sky, and by using some unknown method, he disappeared. The last is me. A hoarse voice reverberated within Su Ming's illusory body. The shadow of a middle-aged man with white hair overlapped with him, and he lifted his right hand and pointed at Dao Yuan as well as Dao Slave 51. With it, Dao Slave 51 let out a shrill scream of pain. Moths crawled out from his body. In the blink of an eye, Dao Slave 51's body turned into an innumerable amount of moths. These moths flapped their wings and turned into a round ball in mid-air that resembled a sun. It then charged towards Dao Yuan. The proud young master trembled. Despair appeared on his face, but in the face of it, madness rose within him after his mind and soul broke down. He lifted his right hand and pointed at the sky. With my orders as Dao Yuan, with my sacred constellation robe as a guide, all. Before he could finish speaking, the sun that formed by the moths closed in on him, yet a wave of yin death aura descended from the sky and landed on the moth sun, removing it from existence. Because of it, Dao Yuan finished his words without being interrupted. All those who wear my subsidiary constellation robe, descend to the land of berserkers. Once his words were spoken, the constellation robe on his body shone with starlight that surged into the sky, filling it with stars in an instant. The starry sky turned into a spinning, giant galactical vortex, and the faint outlines of longships could be seen charging to the place. It's not that I didn't keep my promise, but there is someone who doesn't want me helping you. He wants these people to descend, and he has opened the path for them. This person's level of cultivation is much higher than mine. He has an ancient presence. The white-haired man turned into an illusory moth and left Su Ming's body before disappearing into the sky. I didn't manage to fulfill my promise to you. If you manage to walk out of this place and return your soul to your body, then I will help you one more time. Chapter 743, The Will of Autumn. As those illusory moths disappeared into the sky, Su Ming lifted his head. He saw the boundless starry sky rotating above, as well as longships charging forward. All of these longships were black, and all of them had dozens of people in constellation robes standing within them. Dao Yuan laughed arrogantly at the surface of the sea in the distance. The sacred constellation robe on his body was shining with a brilliant, dark-colored light, and it turned into a compact defense around his body. Su Ming averted his gaze from the sky and looked at the spot where Yu Xian had left, then at the space whereby Su had disappeared. He looked at the lonely ninth summit and the endless broken limbs floating on the surface of the sea. They all died. Su Ming mumbled. His body was no longer corporeal but had become so faded away that he was almost transparent. Grief appeared on his face. He no longer bothered with Dao Yuan or the various longships descending from the sky at that moment. He lifted his feet and moved slowly towards the ninth summit. Fatigue, disappointment, and grief filled Su Ming's heart and soul. He returned to the ninth summit and stopped right outside his master's cave abode. Even at that moment, Su Ming came to stand as the wall that protected the ninth summit. He grabbed the killing sword with his illusory right hand, placing it diagonally so the tip of was facing his lower right. The blade was stable, but the tip of the sword was trembling slightly due to its spirit. It was thirsting for blood and looking forward to killing. Su Ming stood silently. His hair was like a ball of flame that would never be extinguished no matter how hard wind blew against it. He stood there, releasing his spirit. At that instant, he seemed to have truly become one with the ninth summit. One person. One sword. A protection. His body was illusory. There was not a single ripple of power within him. The only thing that remained was the power of his soul. That soul could be said to be his Atman, a form of divine sense, and also Su Ming's undying and imperishable will, which was, by then, the only thing that remained of him. He looked at the sky, and a small smile gradually appeared on his lips. However, there was no hint of carefreeness with it. Instead, it was filled with sadness. In silence, Chen came up to Su Ming's side with gritted teeth even though his body was trembling. He brought out a black knife from his bosom. He was incredibly afraid, so terrified that his body was trembling non-stop. Sweat poured down his body, but true courage was fearlessness when a person was in the face of danger. It was also a form of will that would not allow a person to retreat even when terrified. This was courage. With a bitter smile, the bald crane banished the thought of escape. It let out a long sigh in its heart and flew to Su Ming's side before fixing its stare on the sky. There was a solemnness and madness on its face, something that had never been seen before. "I'm sorry, I promised to take you out of the land of berserkers, but I didn't manage to do it in time," Su Ming said softly while looking at the sky. Chen was trembling, but he still shook his head. He did not speak. At that moment, the numerous longships in the starry sky suddenly let out piercing cries and turned into long black arcs that charged towards the ground. In the blink of an eye, there was 1,000 longships in the air near the ninth summit. Waves of mighty pressure that was difficult to describe with words spread out from the thousands of Dao slaves dressed in constellation robes standing on the longships. Even if there were no Dao slaves in the third step among them, but the shock and destruction that could be brought forth by thousands of cultivators in the second step could sometimes be even more shocking than that of 5 cultivators in the third step. Their aloof gazes and Dao Yuan's crazed roars after his arrogance was restored brought this disaster to its most intense state. "Kill him. Destroy that mountain. Make sure that not a single blade of grass remains there. Damn it. He nearly killed me. He nearly killed me." Dao Yuan's eyes were red. Just a moment ago, he had been surrounded by death. It had been the closest he had ever come to dying. It made the fear in his heart reach its most extreme state. Now that he was filled with a sense of safety, his fear turned into an equal amount of anger. Murderous aura shone in the eyes of the thousands of Dao slaves on the longships, but they did not attack without command. Unless it was completely necessary and the situation forced them to, the members of Morning Dao sect would not attack by themselves. However, the instant Dao Yuan's voice rose into the air, the thousands of people flew out together and turned into thousands of long arcs that charged towards the ninth summit. Their presence was shocking and even surpassed the mighty pressure brought by the 5 Dao slaves in the third step. There was also a sense of suffocation brought by them. Xianxia's eyes turned red. He let out a crazed roar and was just about to rush out while flinging all caution to the wind, but right when he lifted his foot, Su Ming pushed his left hand against Xianxia's shoulder. The power of Su Ming's Artman went into the man's mind and soul, and a roar resounded in Xianxia's mind. He shivered and fell unconscious. Su Ming pushed him gently backwards, and his body flew towards the 9th Summit's cave abode. Many of ours have already died. We can't have any more of our own dying, Su Ming mumbled. When his Artman spread out, it turned into a wave of impact that swept up the stunned bald crane by his side. Only when it was sent into the cave abode as well that the bald crane registered what was happening. Its body trembled as it looked at Su Ming with a dazed expression. It was as if only at that moment did it truly get to know Su Ming. As it continued looking at him, this bald crane who believed itself to be heartless felt its eyes watering. "Help me take care of my senior brothers," Su Ming whispered softly to it. He then took a step towards the incoming thousands of Dao slaves in the second step and charged over to them with a firm resolution as he held the killing sword in hand. Most of the thousands of Dao slaves were more powerful than Su Ming. This was a massacre that bore no suspense because the result was already clear. This was a single person fighting against thousands of people. A shocking roar reverberated in the air, and that was just the near 100 people at the forefront of the charge lifting their right hands together to execute a single divine ability. It turned into endless starlight that crashed into Su Ming's illusory body. Without the existence of the 3 souls that previously sealed his soul, the instant the starlight touched Su Ming's illusory body, the scene of 2 shadows overlapping but not touching each other as if they did not exist in the same dimension did not appear again. Instead, as the light roared, it seemed to have turned into countless needles that caused Su Ming's illusory body to crumble swiftly. He turned into glittering sparkles, and once most of them were extinguished, the remainder fell back before gathering together once again 1,000 feet away. They turned into Su Ming, but he was even more transparent than before. It was as if he would scatter away if wind blew against him. However, at the instant Su Ming's body crumbled, he had slashed once. That slash contained the might of the first slash he had executed after his soul was completed. It contained his soul and also his awakening to the abyss. It contained his origin divine ability. As that slash swept through the air, it charged past the hundreds of people at the front, but it did not seem to contain any destructive power. It was just like a gentle breeze. However, when Su Ming's body crumbled and gathered together once again into an even weaker illusion, the hundreds of people right at the front of the charge Su Ming had just cut suddenly started aging. It was as if the flow of time had been accelerated for them. The operations of their bodies began to run exponentially faster, and their faces soon aged a dozen or more years. Waves of rotting air also began to spread from their bodies. Their hair turned grayish-white. Wrinkles appeared on their faces. Their life force seemed to be devoured by space itself, and most of this life force disappeared within an instant. In fact, there were a dozen-something people, who instantly turned into corpses as their bodies withered and aged because their levels of cultivation were not high and they did not have many years of life left. Even their nascent divinities found it difficult to escape from their bodies. All of them died as they withered the same time as this dozen-something people died. The life force and life of near 100 people vanished. Wisps of white smoke left their bodies and charged towards Su Ming. They instantly fused with him, causing his see-through body to immediately look much more corporeal. Is this my awakened origin divine ability after my soul was completed? Su Ming mumbled. He could sense his soul getting stronger at a maddening pace as those white wisps of smoke entered his body. The life force he absorbed seemed to be a substance that was grossly lacking within him. It was as if he had become a dry sponge at that moment, and he was continuously absorbing other people's life force and years of life to complete everything about himself. However, this awakening was a little too late for Su Ming, because even if that slash had allowed him to absorb a large amount of life force, it still could not fill up the unchangeable difference of power between him and those thousands of Dao slaves. As Dao Yuan screamed shrilly and the thousands of Dao slaves closed in on him once again, they executed their divine abilities at the same time. The starlight that was stirred up was enough to replace all light in the world. As that light filled the air, it was like an ancient beast made of stars devouring Su Ming whole. At the instant it devoured him, he suddenly gained an epiphany. What he had come to understand was his origin divine ability. It was the will of autumn, was it not? It might not be the color of autumn, but the life force he absorbed was like autumn in his body. It was a fusion between death and life. It was the true epitome of change. Autumn. As Su Ming whispered this, his illusory body instantly shone with a red light. It was the color of autumn. An endless amount of snow also appeared out of nowhere around him. The flakes of snow withered once they fell, and they were like the leaves of autumn as they did so. If someone observed from afar, they'd see snow at first, but once they blinked, they'd think that it was the falling leaves they were seeing. Su Ming's power erupted due to his epiphany and moved straight from the initial stage of life matrix to the middle stage of life matrix. It also appeared as the snow and falling leaves around him interlaced with each other, making the color of autumn on his body denser. At the instant the thousands of Tao slaves closed in and the starlight formed by the second batch of nearly 1,000 people submerged Su Ming, understanding appeared in his eyes. His level of cultivation then moved from the middle stage of life matrix straight to the later stage of that realm. Only one more step, and he would be able to reach the second realm in the path of life cultivation life privation. Chapter 744, Yin Death's Child. This one step was not difficult to cross either, because Su Ming already knew what he was lacking. Once he gained his epiphany, he came to a vague understanding that he was lacking life force. It was the years of life that belonged to those from Bright Yang region. It was also at this instant that a man's voice that was unfamiliar to him but was warm and gentle appeared in his soul. It sounded as if it had come from a long, long time ago. Building abyss. Building abyss. This second voice was Su Ming mumbling it to himself. As his voice traveled outwards and the starlight came towards him, a shocking boom shook the sky and earth beyond the 9th summit. The entire world looked as if it had stopped rotating as those booming sounds shot into the air. Su Ming's body crumbled at that instant, even if he had come to understand what it meant to build the abyss, even if he had stepped into the later stage of life matrix, and even if he had managed to execute the will of autumn during the final moment. However, in the face of absolute power, all of these things were so weak that they could not withstand even a single hit. Su Ming's body crumbled, but even though he managed to gather an illusory body once again on the 9th summit, the body that manifested this time was almost completely transparent. It was faint, and if anyone tried to search for him with the naked eye, they'd find it almost impossible to detect him. A weakness that came from the bottom of his soul filled Su Ming's consciousness. He staggered back a few steps, but firmly stopped outside the cave abode at the top of the mountain. Even at this point, he still wanted to protect the 9th summit. Even if his consciousness had almost completely scattered away and he was about to truly die, he still continued standing there firmly, even if he had already become invisible. As the booming sounds reverberated in the sky, several dozens of the thousands of Tao slaves turned into corpses with shocked expressions on their faces. They did not even make a single sound as they transformed and fell into the sea. Less than 50 people died from the thousands. To the Tao slaves, the number of casualties they suffered did not even cause any damage to the foundation of their army. But at that moment, the expressions of those thousands of people had become grave. Even though less than 50 of their own had died, there were several hundred of whose faces had turned pale while they were losing most of their life force as well as their years of life. Even their levels of cultivation had fallen by several stages. All of this was due to Su Ming alone. Kill him. By my orders. Kill him. Damn it. All of you attack together and immediately kill him. Destroy that mountain. It's clear that he's still not choosing to run but to fight to the death in this place because this mountain is incredibly important to him. Destroy the mountain. Kill him. Dao Yuan started yelling once more while hiding behind all of his Dao slaves. Killing intent shone within the thousands of Dao slaves' eyes. This time, as they charged forward, the thousands of people spread out before executing their divine abilities. As they cast them, a destructive power that could destroy the world erupted from their bodies with a bang. That power was enough to destroy the current Su Ming as well as the 9th summit. It would put his senior brothers as well as Chen Chen and the bald crane into eternal slumber, and his eldest senior brother would not wake up ever again, either. In his weakened state, Su Ming lifted his head with great difficulty. His gaze fell on the excited Dao Yuan behind the thousands of Dao slaves. At the instant he saw him, the final chilling light of Su Ming's life shone in his eyes. "I have no regrets living and dying with the 9th summit, but it's a pity that I didn't manage to kill the one who destroyed it, that Dao Yuan. I will be ashamed to meet my senior brothers in hell." Su Ming mumbled. At the instant the divine abilities from the thousands of Dao slaves closed in on him, he lowered his head to look at the killing sword in his hand. The tip of the sword was trembling, and he could sense the resolve to kill the world coming from the spirit. "I have 2 more divine abilities." Su Ming could sense that he was so weak that he had reached his limit. As he was about to disappear, he swiftly lifted his left hand and pushed his palm against the ground. With it, the ground immediately trembled. A wave of earthen aura surged out from the 9th summit and the sea beneath it. It covered Su Ming's left hand, then, through his left arm, it charged into his illusory body, making Su Ming's left hand wither immediately. At the time his arm looked as if it had become emaciated. White light surrounded it. This was the Surging Indulger's divine ability. It was one of the arts Su Ming had learned in Eastern Wasteland's tower. It was also the reason why the ancient existence in Yin Death Vortex had paid attention to him. It was even the key to stir up the 100,000 Surging Indulger and evil spirit warriors in the 2 worlds within the Yin Death Vortex. The Surging Indulger's divine ability used spirits to refine the body. If Su Ming had a body of flesh and blood, then what would wither would be his flesh and blood, yet even though it might look as if it had withered, he wouldn't have lost a lot of his blood and flesh. The portion that withered would have just been absorbed by the other parts in his body, which would cause his body to no longer look complete but as if there was a gap within it. This would then allow the art to use the withered left arm to become a power that could absorb other people's flesh and blood to make its owner's body whole again. In truth, the completion they would gain after that would cause the Surging Indulgers to become slightly stronger than before. However, Su Ming did not possess a physical body at that moment, hence the part that looked withered was his soul. As his left arm withered, his entire illusory body gradually began to wither until his soul completely disappeared. His right hand, which held onto the killing sword, had gathered Su Ming's Artman in its entirety to gain corporeal form, in a manner as if it had gone through crystallization. The right hand swiftly flew up. With its fingers curled around the killing sword and Su Ming's will, at the instant the thousands of divine abilities from the Dao slaves closed in, the hand charged towards the spot where Dao Yuan was in the distance while taking the form of a long arc. It charged forward with a speed that shattered all space and rushed towards Dao Yuan. The sword traveled so quickly that it closed the distance of less than 1,000 feet in the blink of an eye. There had been Dao slaves in its way, but no matter who got in the sword's path, none of them were able to avoid the attack that was practically the last strike of Su Ming's life. At the instant Su Ming sent his sword charging forth, his Artman executed the other divine ability of another race he had learned in Eastern Wasteland's tower. It was the evil spirit's art. A large amount of black smoke erupted from Su Ming's crystallized right hand which held onto the killing sword. Once the black smoke covered the right hand, it became impossible to see. At the instant the hand disappeared, the black smoke turned into a ferocious face of a ghost which covered the area around the killing sword. As it roared, it propelled the killing sword with a bang. Wherever it went, nearly 100 Dao slaves tried to stop it, but the instant they touched the sword, the ghost's face released a roar that had the power to shake people's hearts and souls. This roar reverberated in the air, and it was as if it could stop all operations in the world, for nearly 100 Dao slaves stopped simultaneously. The divine abilities they executed also froze, simply allowing that ghost face to charge past them. The sword appeared right before the screaming Dao Yuan, whose face was now showing shock and terror. The thousands of Dao slaves around him did not have time to save him. Su Ming's killing sword was traveling too quickly, and the ferocious ghost face stopped all the operations in the world, making it so the Dao slaves could only watch what happened. The sword which contained Su Ming's life and everything else within him came at the center of Dao Yuan's brows. At the instant the sword was about to pierce him, the stars in the constellation robe on Dao Yuan's body started rotating swiftly. The starlight spun, and the ferocious ghost face around the killing sword let out a shrill scream of pain and disappeared. However, a scream of pain came from Dao Yuan's mouth as well. His constellation robe was fighting against the ferocious ghost face and protecting his body, but once the Surging Indulger's divine ability had gathered Su Ming's life within the killing sword, the power of absorption from the art had forcefully sucked out a part of Dao Yuan's soul from his body upon impact. Dao Yuan's shrill screams of pain reverberated in the air. His soul was being devoured at a rapid pace, and his body was swiftly withering as it trembled. This was the picture of someone whose flesh, blood, and essence were being absorbed. That pain was comparable to the death by 1,000 cuts. However, the sacred constellation robe was a treasure that all direct descendants of the Dao family in Morning Dao sect could obtain after their birth. It might be impossible for Dao Yuan to bring out its true might, but there were still certain aspects that made the robe powerful. He forcefully retained a single wisp of Dao Yuan's soul so that he would not die. Even if his body turned into mere skin and bones at that moment and there was a dismal air all around him, he was still alive. However, even if he was alive, he was in pain that was much worse than death. His shrill screams of pain had already turned hoarse, and he had lost all his strength. If the constellation robe had not locked his soul in his body, he would have died a long time ago. But this lockdown and the absorption from Su Ming's killing sword was like a saw, making him suffer an intense pain that would shatter anyone else's consciousness. However, it was difficult for Su Ming to last long in this condition. His killing sword gradually lost its power of absorption. The ferocious ghost face had also disappeared from midair. Everything that was part of Su Ming's very existence was no longer around. Even his consciousness, which he had gathered on the killing sword, gradually turned into glittering sparkles that were now spreading out. The killing sword let out a sad whistle. It had not been with Su Ming for long, but during that short period of time, it had experienced the true way to be used as a sword. It was infatuated with this feeling, and so it whistled sadly once it sensed Su Ming's consciousness fading away and scattering in all directions. In the distance, the divine abilities from the thousands of Dao slaves had already covered the 9th summit. It was quickly being broken down, and it wouldn't be long until it crumbled in its entirety. It seemed that it was no longer possible for anything to happen that could change what was now meant to be. The final soul in Su Ming's body, that of the white-haired man who had turned into moths, had been correct. There was someone who was unwilling to let him succeed, and that someone had opened the path for all the ships to enter smoothly into the land of berserkers. But there was also an existence which was unwilling to let Su Ming die like this. Su Ming, are you willing to become Yin Death's child, for Yin Death's fragmented worlds? An ancient voice asked languidly from the sky at that instant. Once that voice spoke, the whole world froze. The thousands of Dao slaves became still and unmoving in midair. Their divine abilities froze up, and the 9th summit's collapse was also halted. The sea's movements, the wind's howls, and everything else froze the moment the voice spoke. Chapter 745. Dao Yuan's Death. If you become Yin Death's child, then the 9th summit will be protected. The land of berserkers will become part of Yin Death's fragmented worlds once again, which is not reversible. From then on, no more immortals will be able to take even half a step into your world. If you become Yin Death's child, your senior brothers will be able to live. They will not be affected even a single bit by this disaster. In fact, I can also heal your eldest senior brother's injuries within an instant. If you refuse, then there will be no 9th summit anymore. Your senior brothers will die, and the land of berserkers will still be separated from Yin Death's fragmented worlds, just as it always has been. Wear this. The moment you put it on, you will become Yin Death's child. You will be delivered to the barren lands of divine essence. That place does not belong to Yin Death region. It is outside, and it is very far away from this place. Go to the barren lands of divine essence and search for the King of Yin Death's fragmented worlds. There should be an entrance that leads to the 5th great true world in the barren lands of divine essence. Look for that entrance. Once you wear this, you will no longer have freedom. Once you wear this, you will lose your ability to love. You will become cold and heartless. You will lose all sense of pain. You will no longer know what it even is. You will become Yin Death's child, something that belongs solely to Yin Death's fragmented worlds. An endless amount of crystalline sparks gradually appeared from thin air as the world remained still. Once they gathered together, they formed into an item floating before Su Ming's semi-transparent body. It was a mask, one made of black steel. When you wear this, you will no longer be you. Su Ming's heart trembled. He stared at the mask with a blank expression, and the ancient voice that came from the yin-death vortex reverberated in his heart. Anguish and absent-mindedness gradually appeared on his face. The dazedness then turned into a sentence in his head. When you learn who you are no longer you. When you no longer know who you will be you. Su Ming remained silent. Wear it and head to the barren lands of divine essence. It is a place that has been sealed by the four true great worlds. It is a region that is feared by the four true great worlds, and it has numerous powerful warriors from the four true great worlds guarding it. It is a wasteland, a barren piece of land. It is also the place that seals the fifth great true world, and this was done by the four great true worlds. It is also the place where the four great true worlds keep their criminals. It is a place where powerful warriors gather. That place is veiled in mystery, and there are endless possibilities there. Yin Death's child, wear the mask, and I promise that I will protect the berserkers. I promise that you will have no worries, until the moment you die in battle. Find the king of Yin Death's fragmented worlds, or look for the entrance to the fifth great true world. The ancient voice reverberated in the air, spreading out and filling the world that had become still before turning into lingering echo that lasted for a long, long time. You cannot refuse. That was the final sentence spoken by the ancient voice. There was a ruthless tone to it, but there was no threat contained within it. Yet everything before Su Ming had now turned into the sharpest blade that was ripping his heart apart. The ninth summit's destruction had stopped. The cave abode's collapse had only just begun before it was frozen. Why me? Su Ming asked in a low voice after remaining silent for a moment. However, he never obtained an answer to his question. He slowly lifted his hand. He knew that he indeed could not refuse what the voice had just offered. When he held the mask, a thick yin death aura spread out from within it. That aura instantly blended with Su Ming's body, causing him to swiftly gain corporeal form from his illusory state. All his injuries were completely cured in the blink of an eye. His legs, arms, body, and head showed up in their complete form. Su Ming did not put on the mask immediately. He held it firmly, and only the slightest quiver could be seen on his hand. He lifted his head and looked at the sky. My eldest senior brother's injuries, Su Ming said in a low voice. The moment you wear the mask, he will awaken, the ancient voice said after a moment. Su Ming remained silent for some time before speaking up again. I need 7 days. Very well. When you put on that mask 7 days later, I will come and receive you, the old voice stated in a merciless tone as it spread through the entire land. Su Ming looked at the Tao slaves that had been halted in the world, and when he spoke next, his voice had a freezing chill to it. I want all of these thousands of Tao slaves dead. Very well. At the instant that ancient voice said these two words, the thousands of Tao slaves that had been frozen in midair immediately started bleeding from their eyes, ears, nose, and mouth, and their bodies instantly exploded with a bang. Even their constellation robes were unable to stop this destructive power. As they collapsed, their flesh and blood spread everywhere. The thousands of Tao slaves all died at that instant. There was no pain screams, no struggle. Su Ming lifted his head and laughed at the sky. There was a craziness to his laughter, and as he laughed, tears fell from his eyes. The thousands of Tao slaves had been so powerful, but in the eyes of those who were truly powerful, they were so weak that they had shattered and crumbled with just 2 words. At that instant, a desire to become truly strong was deeply burned into Su Ming's mind. It was a bloody memory, one that he engraved deep into his bones, one that he would never forget. I want his robe to no longer protect him. I want to personally crush his bones and scatter his ashes into the wind. Su Ming's crying eyes were crimson red at that moment. He turned to glare at Dao Yuan. Very well. The ancient voice was as heartless and aloof as ever. Once he said it, the stars in the sacred constellation robe on Dao Yuan's body that had still been rotating slowly even after the world had frozen became still in an instant. 7 days later, I will wait for your call. The old voice gradually faded into the distance. Once it disappeared, the world's operations instantly returned to normal, but the 9th summit's destruction no longer continued. Since the thousands of Tao slaves had died, their divine abilities also faded away. The 9th summit might be damaged, but it still stood tall. The sea started moving and waves began striking at the shore again. The sea breeze began blowing once more, having recovered from its frozen state. It scattered the torn pieces of flesh of thousands of Dao slaves as they fell to the surface of the sea. The wind brought away the thick, bloody stench, but it could not dissolve the bright red stain on the surface of the sea. Once the stars in the constellation robe stopped moving and the world's operations were restored, Dao Yuan let out a shrill scream, and his emaciated body shivered. He looked at the thousands of dead Dao slaves in the sky, all of whom had been reduced to pieces of flesh and blood, and his body started trembling furiously. They were his everything. They were his foundation in Morning Dao sect. They were guards that he had drawn to his side after paying an incredibly large price for them. But now, on this one trip to the land of berserkers, all of them had died. This consequence was something he could not bear. All the deaths turned into pain, and he coughed up a mouthful blood straight from his heart. He shivered, and goosebumps soon rose all over his body. As extreme terror filled him, to the point that his mind almost detached itself from his body, for he saw Su Ming glaring at him with bloodshot eyes from mid-air. While screaming, Dao Yuan started retreating without any hesitation, but before he could withdraw even 30 feet backwards, Su Ming appeared right in with burning hate. His savage expression, crimson eyes, and hate-filled presence rose Dao Yuan's terror to its peak. In a frenzy, this young lord wanted to activate his sacred constellation robe, but no matter how he tried, it did not work. It was like a normal robe, one that didn't have any powers it should have. Su Ming lifted his right hand. He caught Dao Yuan's right index finger, and the once proud young lord screamed in terror. Su Ming squeezed lightly, and there was a small cracking sound. He had crushed Dao Yuan's right index finger. Filled with intense pain, Dao Yuan screamed even louder. "Don't kill me! Don't kill me! I am a direct descendant of Morning Dao." Before Dao Yuan could finish screaming, Su Ming had already crushed another finger, and another, and another. Once all of Dao Yuan's fingers had been crushed, the young lord's pain screams had become hoarse, and there was a weakness to his voice, but there was still a crazed, sinister glint in his eyes that wished evil upon Su Ming. "If you kill me, then you will suffer and die. Morning Dao sect will definitely take revenge for me. Your people will be eradicated. They will die." Su Ming lifted his right hand and crushed Dao Yuan's right arm inch by inch, moving slowly upwards from the shattered fingers and palm. When the bones in Dao Yuan's right arm had all been crushed, the shattered pieces became spikes that pierced his skin to the point they could be seen outside. The young lord was in an incredibly wretched state. Dao Yuan's screams became louder. The pain destroyed all his malice and his curses. As tears fell from his eyes, he started begging for mercy non-stop. "Let me go. I." But before he could even finish pleading, Su Ming had seized his left arm, and crushed the bones were in the same manner as before. After that, Su Ming did not immediately kill him. Instead, he crushed Dao Yuan's legs and skull before untying his constellation robe. Once Su Ming put away the robe, he calmly brought out a medicinal pill to cure wounds and threw it into the weakened and terrified Dao Yuan's mouth. That medicinal pill melted in Dao Yuan's mouth. It turned into a wave of life force that filled him with vigor, preventing him, whose consciousness was about to scatter, from sinking into unconsciousness. Once again, he experienced the indescribable pain of having most of the bones in his body crushed, and the suffering of his crushed bones scraping against his flesh and blood. His shrill and hoarse screams rang in the air once again. As he screamed, Su Ming took a step forward and stood before the trembling body. Once he froze Dao Yuan's body with an art, he lifted his left hand slowly and sliced down at the spot right above Dao Yuan's spine. A long wound instantly appeared there. Due to his hate for Dao Yuan, he used both his hands to rip that wound open. As he did that, Dao Yuan screamed even more shrilly. His spine and 2 rows of ribs were revealed under the open flesh, along with his beating heart and lungs, which were alternating between contracting and expanding. With a calm expression on his face, Su Ming reached in with both hands and seized Dao Yuan's lungs before he yanked them out in one swift move. The shrill screams reached their most intense state. When Dao Yuan breathed in next, his eyes bulged out, and as his body shivered, he truly breathed his last and died. His storage bag flew into the air. Once Su Ming seized it, he closed his eyes, and 2 trails of tears fell down his cheeks.